Welcome to Ultimate DIY, where you learn to be your own handyman. Today, we are going to build some custom jambs for a salvage door and put it in this massive opening. Okay, guys, so the door that we have is a salvage door, and this is a big opening. I'm almost 6'4" with my shoes on, and you can see how tall this is. The door itself is going to be 8 feet tall, and then the opening itself is a little bit larger. So we've got this door that already has the hinges on it, but it does not have any type of a jamb. So I have to build that jamb. And I will show you how we do that in just a second. But let me show you a couple things you need to make sure of here first. Now, first of all, you can go to the big box store if it is a normal door and buy pre-built jambs, put them together and put it around your door. It's much harder though to find those pre-built jambs for the 8-foot doors. And it's even harder than that to find them in natural wood because we're staining all of our trim and all the jambs and the doors themselves. So I really don't want any type of fiberboard or anything like that in here. So it makes it that much more difficult. There's even poplar out there which you can get, but the poplar is going to be in an 8-foot length only in the big box stores. I could not find anything longer, which was going to make it 2 or 3 inches too short. So all that being said, if you're going to start on this, the very first thing you got to do is you need to check plumb. You're going to check both sides for plumb, and I will show you here what I mean by that. You're going to take and put the level on it, and you're going to see where you are. And right now, this one is pretty much dead on. I would do the same thing on the other side, and then I'm going to check the floor. And this is probably the most important. You're going to lay this on the floor, and you're going to see where you're. And right now, we are dead level, which is perfect. And what that means is that now each one of my legs can be cut exactly the same. If I had, say this side here was actually off and I was having to hold it up, then I'm going to have to adjust one of my legs so that they come up straight and that the header, the jamb header across the top of the door is actually going to be horizontal. If you don't do that, it's going to set crooked and you'll have a hard time installing your door. So be sure you check the horizontal here. This is probably the most important check because on the sides you can shim out, you can get that door straight, but the bottom is going to create you a problem. If you can find it here, you'll save yourself a bunch of headache later. So let's go ahead, and I have already laid out my sawhorses and put that salvage door on the sawhorses, and I have figured out my legs and the header, and I'm going to show you how I do that so it'll make it a little easier for you. So let's go take a look. Okay, guys, so when it comes to the door, I already have, this is my salvage door in the center, and this is just basically regular pine. I tried to pick the straightest pieces that I could find. So if you're doing this with regular pine and it's not spliced together, you'll know when you go up and you look for trim, you'll see some of this that has been spliced together where they've glued it, they've sanded it, they make it really straight, and they'll cut relief cuts on the back of that trim. That helps keep it from twisting and turning. But when you're dealing with regular pine like this is just builder grade. You are going to have to go through those stacks and find some really good pine. So all that being said, how you're going to figure this out, first of all, these are your legs. And this is going to be the top, or what I call a header, even though the header goes above the door, and that's a structural member. I just call this the header on my jamb. Now, there's two ways to do this, and this is important. You can actually cut this with a rabbet, and it goes down, and then this top board will be a little bit wider, and they slide together. So a rabbet is a great way to make a very secure fit. But the way I'm looking at this today is I want to do this DIY. A lot of you guys out there do not have the stuff to be able to cut a rabbet. Now you can do a rabbet with a circular saw and you can play with it and get it right. It's very hard to get it precise though if you're doing it that way. A router works much better, or a table saw to cut that rabbet. So I'm going to do it without the rabbet, and it's going to make it a little simpler. So this is easier for you guys to do. So that means that I can just take my header board and I'm going to cut it to the width of my header plus my reveals. So my reveals are the gap that goes all the way around the door. I'm going to set it to 1/8 of an inch. Now some people do 1/16. I like an eighth. It gives me a little bit more room to adjust. And there's another reason. I have a 1/8 of an inch block right here. But to go around and use this one little block everywhere and try to set it is very difficult. A popsicle stick is actually 1/8 of an inch. So I can use multiple popsicle sticks, go around, and I can use 2 of my big clamps, clamp from underneath and pull it in tight. And then that way I can set everything like where my hinges are going to be, etc., and make it work very well. So we're going to have an 1/8 of an inch gap. So let me go ahead then and explain how that's going to work. If this door is exactly 36 inches wide, and I've got the little diagram right here. So the door is 36 inches wide, and I'm going to have a 1/8 of an inch gap on the right, 1/8 of an inch gap on my left. That's going to make 36 1/4 inches for my header, and it's right here. So you can see where I added it, 36 1/8 and 1/8, 36 1/4. So we know then that very top piece is going to be 36 1/4. Let me show you from what point to what point. So you've got 36 1/4 up to this edge. So you do not count the outer edge on each side. So we have that piece cut. So now we are going to figure out our legs. And let me show you how I do the legs. So if you look at the leg, I know that the door itself is 96 inches and I have a 1/8 inch gap or reveal at the very top. I also have the thickness of this 3/4 piece of trim that goes on top here, the part of the actual casing. So I've got 3/4, I've got 1/8 gap, and then I have a door that is going to be 96 inches. Now the only thing left is my bottom reveal at the floor itself. I want a 1/2 inch gap at the very bottom of the floor. So to make this leg correct, I have to add all of those together. If you add them all together, you have 97 3/8 of an inch. Now this would be different if I was cutting a rabbet. You'll have to change your measurements based on that rabbet. But you come all the way down, just like this. And I am exactly 97 3/8, right on the money. And you make sure that both legs are exactly the same. Now, you can actually, at this point, drill these out. I drilled them so it does not crack my wood, and I put the screws in. And the screws that I'm using are going to be these 1.5 inch screws, wood screws. Pretty simple, small profile, easy to go in. But be sure, if you're using pine especially, you pre-drill with a drill bit a little bit smaller than these. So I did that. Now you can actually put glue here as well. I did not put glue, and I'll tell you the main reason. Because when we get to these hinges, what I did is I have the other hinges mounted on the board, and I made 2 marks where they are. And then I went down and I lifted this hinge over this side and found my center. So I gave a center measurement and made marks. So what I'll have to do now is I need to pull this off and transpose these measurements to the opposite side over here so that I can put my hinges on. It's easy to do that if I undo the screws and pull this board off. So if I had glued that, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would have to try to do this in the air, and that's much more difficult. So we're going to now, and then this is one, this door, since it is so big, has 4 hinges. So you got one here, here, and one down here. And these hinges are going to be the 3.5-inch hinge. Let me show these to you. These are 3.5-inch hinges, and they have the little curved radiuses on these. You can also get them square, but what was already on this door was curved, so I matched it. Now, one of the things you're going to want to look at, it's going to go like this, and your casing will be mounted here on this side. They stick down quite a ways. You can see the one that's mounted. That's normal. That's the way it's supposed to be. Yeah, right here. And then the other thing to pay attention to is if you look at these hinges, there is a top and a bottom. The bottom has an opening to be able to put a screwdriver or something in it and pop this pin out. So you don't want, in other words, install it like this because it's easy to do. And then over time, that pin's going to start working its way down and fall out. So make sure you're orienting your pin the correct way, or your entire hinge the correct way. Now, another thing that you do need to pay attention to if you're building this is make sure that this door is opening in the direction that you want it to open in. Right now, I have my door where the handle is on that side, and as it opens, it's going to open against the wall. If I did it the other way, it would open into my closet, and I do not want that. So make sure that it's going the right way. If it isn't going the right way, you can change hinges, but you're not going to be able to change it if you already have the hole mounted here on the side for your handle. That's going to be kind of stuck. So what we'll do next, I'm going to go ahead and set the camera up so that you can kind of watch. I'm going to take that off, and we're going to flip it over, and we're going to try to mark our hinges and get those cut out. Get it put together, and we should be able to get it stood up in the opening. So let's do it. We are going to unscrew these real quick. It should not take very long. And alrighty, I gotta have a problem. So I just moved that back and set it right there, guys. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to transpose this with a square. Just like this. So we're going to move our marks down. Okay guys, so if you're working without a jig, once you loosen this and have it setting over here, I prop the door up on a 2x4 so I can have my hinge on here and then work with it to get it to where it's going to close. Now I transposed all of those measurements that I had from the other side over to this side and used my little framing square right here to move all of those. Now the couple of measurements that are very important. I know that I want a 1/2 inch at the end. So once I get it transposed and I put a screw in, I want to make sure that down here at the end, I'm setting at the 1/2 inch, which I'm exactly on a 1/2 inch. So I've got that. Now what I do is I will take a screw before I do the mortar part, mortise it out and cut it out. And I will put a screw about where I think it's going to be at the top. And I do one down at the very bottom. So that way I can close the side just like this. And then I can reach under and feel, and if I have to, look over and make sure that I'm flush all the way down. Now, I'm very good on the top. Let's see where we are down here. We are pretty much all the way on down at the bottom. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these and try to get those just right. So if I raise it up, it looks like this needs to be pushed down just a little. So I'm going to have to push it over just a hair, and then sink a screw in. Now the easy way to do this would be to have a jig, but if you don't have a jig, this should work. So let's see where we are now. That's very good. So we're going to go to the next one over here and try this one. Now I'm going to take it and turn it first, see if I need to move it any. This is pretty good. I may push a little on this left side before I put the screw in. Got it right here in the center. Push just a little with my leg and sink it in. Now I can check and make sure that all of them are flush, and they're all flush. That looks really good all the way down. We're lined up, and we have our 1/2 inch down here at the end. So I know that the top will line up if we're exactly 1/2 inch, and we are on the money 1/2 inch. Now I'm going to go back with a pencil or a pen because I want a really tight cut line, and I'm going to mark my spots. And when I do that, then I'm going to come back with my chisels and chisel it out and get it the actual hinge below those lines. There we go. So now I can undo those screws and I can start knocking those out with the chisel. So let's go ahead and do that real fast. And I'm doing this one at a time and checking to make sure it marked well, because if you're going to correct it, it's easier to correct right then and put the screw back and make sure you're marked correctly where you can see it. But all of these marks look really well. So now we have that. So now we're just going to move this out to the side and we are going to try to chisel this out. Now you can start with a razor knife and go around your edges. I'll kind of show you from here so you can see, but you just work around the edges. And actually this blade is pretty dull. So make sure you start with a good sharp blade. Be very careful, don't cut yourself. If I did that, my wife would never let me hear the end of it. So now the blade is sharp, so I can actually cut out my line all the way around. Just like that. And then I make cross cuts. It'll be easier when I start working with the chisel to chisel it out. Sharp chisel. Sometimes, if the wood is soft, you don't even have to use the hammer, especially if you kind of pre-cut it a little. You can just wiggle it back and forth to work your way down. Now remember, this is going to look a little rough. It's not going to look as smooth as if you used a router bit, but it's going to be covered up. You just want to get it low enough that your hinge will set inside of it. Yeah, see here? Just like that. And you just want to take a little at a time off. You don't want to go crazy and dig real deep. So I kind of get it where I think it's going to be, and then I'll take a hinge and put on it, and just to get an idea of how much more I need to take off. Because that's probably only a 1/16. Yeah, we need to go deeper. We're just starting to make the actual cut. You can use a smaller one for around the edges. You don't have the edges off, you're not going to be setting right, which you're going to think that you need a whole lot more, and you may have just needed to take those edges out. And you can go a little bit wider if you need to. You want to try to stay pretty close so it doesn't show up a lot when you're after you have your hinge on, but you can adjust your hinge. See if that's about right. That looks pretty good. Looks like we are below everywhere, and we are right where the screw hole is at. So we're going to be pretty good on that one. So then we just move to the next ones, and we do the same thing we did here, and then we'll reattach it, attach the screws on the top, and this door will be ready to actually stab. So I'll put it on fast forward so you don't get bored with that, and I'll get that knocked out. So now all I'm going to do is remount the screws and get it into place. Now the most important part here is to make sure that I'm that 1/2 inch down. So I'm going to put back, I can see where my original screw holes were. So we're going to go back with those. By doing that, I should end up at the exact spot. All right, guys, so this door actually had a little bit of a bow to it. It was not straight. That happens sometimes with all natural wood doors. That's probably why this one was on closeout. So when I go to shut it, it is not wanting to go all the way shut, and it's putting a bind on the hinge. Let me show you a quick way you can fix that. You take and pop your hinge out. If you're using a screwdriver, make sure that it's not tapered, because you'll have a hard time getting your screwdriver out if it is, because you can wedge it. Pull your pin out. Now push it, and you'll generally see where it's different. So I can tell that I need, like this one here needs to come over, and yeah, actually pretty much that's it. Maybe a little on the bottom one. So you have 3 tabs though. You have 2 really thick ones, and you have 3 small ones. I always try to bend the small ones. Now use some channel locks, grab a hold and bend. Now these are black, so I can retouch up. If you're worried about scratching it, you can put a cloth in between. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to push my door over with my foot so I don't block your view, and then I'm going to try to bend this over a little. That, like that, and like that. So that way, now it should pull. And I'm going to go ahead and try to do the big ones just a little. There we go. And this one. Bigger ones are a little harder to turn. There we go. So that should do it. Now I'm going to line my pin back up. And what you can do is leave your pin out a little bit. If you think you might have to do some adjustments, so it's easier to get out the next time. Just like that, I'll leave it up a little. So then I can kind of test. Now I'm not putting near as much bind on my hinge. And I have a good seam all the way down. right, guys, the door is finally mounted. I use solid shimming on this side. You can see my reveal. It's a little bit wider reveal than I usually do, but I had a lot of struggle with this door because it was slightly warped. I believe that's why, like I said earlier, it was on closeout and I got it so cheap, but it created me a lot of work trying to straighten everything. But now it looks like it's pretty good. It's going to line up good, barely pushing, and it should line up here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up the door, and I have already marked, you can see the line here, I already marked it all the way up, and that is where we are going to put our stops. Because when you're building these, you have to put your own stop. Now you can make these as thick as you want. These are going to be a 1/2 inch thick, and I believe it's about 2 inches wide. And I'm just going to line it right up on that mark right there. And then that way, and nail it in. I'll use some 18 gauge nails. Some people use staples. I don't particularly like staples. But we are going to do that. Nail it all the way in. You can see the mark goes there as well, and across the top. And how I do this is I will just go ahead and line this straight up at the top, just like that, and then just butt the other one up to it. You can miter it, but I think that's overkill for this. So we're going to get that done real quick. And my gun of choice is the 18 gauge DeWalt. This one is air supplied, pneumatic, but I really like the battery ones. I have some of those too, but today we are using pneumatic. All right, guys, last piece. Made it nice and tight. Let's see if we can. Hate gaps, especially on stuff that's going to be stained. Line up your two corners. Shoot it in. There we go. We're looking very good. And we have the door installed. Okay, guys, there you go. The door is installed. I did solid blocking all the way around. The little trim pieces that actually close the gap are installed. My gaps are not bad at all. I would have liked it just a tad bit tighter, but it's hard to do when the door itself was kind of warped. But it does work well. As you can see, it does really good. And I am tight all the way up this way, that way. And my seam is really good here. It looks fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to end up trimming this out with a little cedar, because everything else in this room, including the windows, are done in cedar. We're fixing to do this entryway right here. It will all be cedar, and I will just do some mitered corners. If you want to see how to do that, I have other videos that actually show that process. But that is pretty much it for today. When you are doing these, be sure that to take your time, kind of move that back and forth in the board like I showed you when you're trying to put on your hinges. Your hinges are going to be the hardest thing to do. If you can afford to, go ahead and get a jig, because it will make your life much easier. I did this without a jig today to show you that it can be done. I have 6 other doors I'm about to mount, and I will be using a jig with those doors. And I'll show you in a future video how you do that with a jig. So if you got something out of today's video, be sure you hit that like and subscribe button down at the bottom. Be sure you hit the little bell notification so you know about all the upcoming videos as I release them. And I do appreciate you guys watching. And if you know some tricks that help get a door up like this without using a lot of fancy, expensive tools, be sure you leave those in the comments, because I like to read them, and I'm sure everyone else does too. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys on the next video.